I knew it was over when Troy Halpern laughed. It wasn't just a chuckle, but a loud, open laugh that echoed throughout the glass room, as if he had heard a stupid joke. And all because Marlene Davis, a person with 7 years of experience, the author of the damn manual, which was always the first to arrive and the last to leave, dared to ask questions. I asked why the magazines had disappeared, where the strange payments were coming from, and why the supplier, who had been officially closed back in 2019, had reappeared. "Let's not get paranoid," Troy said, waving my 68-page report like it was just a grocery receipt. "We are a growing company, not a monastery." Everyone in the room laughed. Troy leaned back in his comfortable chair, as if he'd just invented a cure for cancer using just a marker and a few buzzwords. Someone even asked why the account of a contractor participating in the supplier diversity program was located in Luxembourg. But no one asked why the awards were made using codes that didn't even exist a year ago. And certainly no one cared that entire folders of audits, which I had recently checked 3 times, had disappeared from the archive. I didn't argue. I just nodded like a good girl, took my pen, and calmly walked out. My dignity dragged behind me like toilet paper stuck to my heel. If you're listening to this right now while scrolling through your feed, driving, or folding laundry, please like and subscribe. 97% of you usually ignore stories, like my manager ignores common sense. And for our team, this is really important. But let's go back to the moment when my career ended and something else awakened inside me. It wasn't just an insult. Troy spoke of the old rules as if he were brushing them aside like flies. But I wrote most of these rules. For example, the one that says that all data from reporting-related servers, including the old scary Server 7, must be saved and logged every 48 hours and kept for at least 7 years. You can't just give a person a nice job and let him play with fire. Troy had his hair gelled and a double espresso in his hand. He didn't even use the word reporting, except when removing it from documents. That evening I came home, opened the freezer, and looked at the USB flash drive hidden behind a bottle of emergency vodka. There was one neatly labeled file on it. This was the official data retention policy of the Verstern Company, certified in PDF format with a signature, time, and seal. I once mailed it to myself and haven't even opened it until today. I poured a glass of wine, opened my laptop, and started looking through old server logs. Because paranoia is just common sense when you work for a company that gives people like Troy power. And here it is, the very same request to delete archive folders according to control requirements. Server 7 was scheduled to be wiped at 3:17 a.m. on the same day I submitted my final audit. The deletion was carried out through a secret account belonging to a contractor who was not on the employee list. And Troy signed it all. I didn't cry or scream. I just woke up. I woke up like a deer who realized there were wolves nearby, but instead of running, he reached for a rifle that someone had accidentally left nearby. The next morning, I came to the HR department. I put on my dismissal clothes, a gray jacket without makeup, and soft shoes without heels so that I could walk almost silently along the floor. They greeted me with forced smiles. "Marlene, thank you for coming. Your position was eliminated as part of a strategic optimization. I just want you to sign 2 copies of my latest audit with a timestamp." I interrupted. They blinked, nodded, and printed everything out. I signed, took my copy, and, without saying a word, left the key card on the table. By the time I got to the parking lot, I had already sent a letter to my old friend Dennis. She currently works in the sexual violence unit. We met many years ago at a conference where we were complaining about bad food and even worse management. I wrote her a short message. Subject, confidential. Attachment, adjusted audit. No accusations, just hints. I pressed send, put it into gear, and sat in the car until I realized it. I got fired for just doing my job. They laughed in the very room where they used to come to me for advice. And now my place has been taken by a man who thought that control was just a nice word on a stand-in hall. Irony. Troy didn't even understand what policy he had destroyed, and he certainly didn't know who had come up with it. They called it optimization, as if cutting off a head is just changing a hairstyle. A couple of days later, on Thursday at 10:04, I received an invitation. Email subject, fast synchronization. No summons, no explanation, just 3 words that sounded like a sentence. But I came anyway, because I am polite, punctual, and not stupid. Lisa from HR, the one who always smelled of lavender and had a nervous cough, looked at me the way you would look at a raccoon who had been caught in the attic. There was pity, fear, and a drop of guilt in her eyes. Next to her sat a man in a gray suit with a face so blank it looked like it had been generated by a computer. He was from the legal department, not ours, external. They even brought a special device to press the right button. Marlene. Lisa nervously clicked the mouse as if it could save her. We appreciate your contribution to the restructuring ahead of our IPO. Your position is no longer needed, the lawyer said. You can say that too, I replied. I'm just a comma in a brochure. The man in the gray suit moved papers across the table. Severance pay, confidentiality agreement, non-disclosure agreement, official termination of contract. My silence in exchange for a sum that at first seemed generous until you remember that I worked there for 7 years. I built a data protection system from scratch and haven't taken a vacation since Obama was president. But I didn't argue, I didn't ask to meet with Troy, I didn't threaten, I just turned the papers over to the last page and circled one line with a pen. I said I want a copy of my final audit with a timestamp and a letter and the report itself. No certificates, no credence. The man in gray blinked. Lisa was a little confused. This is an unusual request. As well as deleting logs, she added. I answered calmly. Have you started yet? They printed it out. I signed, took my copy, and left. She didn't even take a napkin or a basket of cupcakes with her. I just sat in the car. The ventilation system hummed like an old smoker. I took out my phone and scrolled down to the bottom of my contacts list to where they save numbers just in case. There was one claim from the supervisory authority. We met at a conference in Baltimore, escaped from a presentation on auditing with empathy, drank expensive wine, and laughed at men named Brand who called themselves rebels. I remembered her dry laugh when I told her that I had created a backup server that only I had access to. I wrote her a letter. No threats, no accusations, just facts. Subject: Fui from a former Vin High Control Officer. Text: Hello, Denis. Hope you're fine. I just completed an internal audit at Vern. Before the reduction, I discovered some inconsistencies. I think it's especially worth paying attention to compliance logs, data retention policies, and the old server, which we called Server 7. I'm attaching a brief description and a redacted copy of the report, time-stamped and signed by me. I'm not asking for anything. I just thought it would be better if you heard about it from me now than later from the news. With a warm hello, I attached the files, hit send, and just sat there staring at the car's dashboard. 5 minutes. She didn't move. She didn't breathe heavily. She just was. There's that moment when you're stepping off a sinking ship. Your feet have already left the deck, but haven't yet touched the lifeboat. You don't feel anything. No fear, no anger. Just by realizing it, there are no more rules. And there's some peace in this. They wanted me to leave before IPO, before everything closed. They thought I was a risk, that I was an extra thread, but they didn't know the most important thing, something that 3 would never understand. The loose threads will unravel if you pull them properly. And that was just the beginning. The day after I sent the letter, Dennis, I woke up at 5:42 in the morning. Not because I was worried. It's just that my body definitely felt something and changed. It was as if the universe itself had finally decided that the time for reckoning had come. I quietly walked into the kitchen in my socks and poured coffee into my favorite mug, the same one they usually give me when I give lectures. She sat down at a small maple table that was left by her grandmother. Then she opened the laptop. I didn't watch the news. I didn't go to LinkedIn to read more of Troy's laudatory nonsense about leadership and growth in thinking. I opened a folder called ARC. Inside there are neat subdirectories. Each version is checked and saved. The archive was updated once a quarter because I am one of those people who not only maintains order, I create archives. And so, in folder Q1, underlined 2021, lay that very same def, the official notarized internal data storage policy of the Wind Company. I double-clicked. The file opened with a heavy creak, like an ancient door opening. Clause 4.2.1. All compliance-related logs must be archived in duplicate and stored on a secure and legacy server system. Photos must be kept for at least 7 years according to federal standards. And here is point 4.2.2.1b. Removal of any data from the mirror server must be logged, approved by 2 senior compliance officers, and retained for possible audit. Server 7 is a digital graveyard. They were afraid to touch it because it was the only one that still had a special backup script running, tied to the compliance metadata. He watched everything silently, and I knew Troy got in there without permission. He told everyone that the server was outdated. I compared it to a laptop from 2008 that thought it was a god, but he didn't know that I installed a hook script via cron. This script recorded every uninstall attempt. Who deleted it, from what IP, through what access. And guess who deleted 8.3 gigabytes of audit data at 3:17 a.m. via a fake contractor's beadboard with a Virgin Islands IP address via VPN? I opened a new document and started writing. Subject: Problems saving data. Server 7. Sent via anonymous portal to company win. Type of message from the informant. Description: Deletes server audit logs from a legacy but officially used compliance data archive. Using unauthorized external IT personnel to access a secure backup system without double authentication. Removal of internal documentation from public repositories without notification to the Securities and Exchange Commission. C. Violation of Storage Policy Clause 4.2.1. The appendix contains the official internal data processing policy, approved in 2021, with a full description of the system of compliance requirements and image storage rules. I changed the sending date, exported the memo to PDF, removed all metadata, encrypted the attachment, sent it through 3 proxy servers, and uploaded it to the DNS system in the database for the Securities and Exchange Commission, SE. I used a nickname we'd once come up with over mimosas when we joked about having a backup plan in case we got tired of work. I leaned back in my chair and looked around. Nobody clapped. There were no fireworks, only the quiet hum of the refrigerator and the first rays of sun on the roofs of the neighboring houses. Then I went to the closet, took a single stud drawer from the top shelf, and opened it. Inside are tax papers, an expired passport, and an unopened envelope from the post office with a marker note written on it. Don't open until they start lying. I didn't open it, but I knew it contained a signed and notarized copy of the very document I had just sent. I sent it to myself 3 years ago in case things went wrong. Everything was intact. Precedents, supply chains, references to laws. Nobody saw me do it. No loud posts on social media. No leaks to Jazz. No hysterics in the office with stacks of printouts. I didn't need attention. I needed precision. And Server 7 was about to become the loudest ghost in the glass building that Troy loved to show off to investors. It all started with an enthusiastic article in TickPaul's, one of those saccharine reviews where every top manager looks like a hero. The headline was, "How Verson's new chief compliance officer paved the way for IPO's success." I clicked. I shouldn't have, but I did it anyway because when you deal with paperwork and pain every day, you learn to chew over even offensive things calmly. There he is, the 3-legged smirker, standing against the wall of planks, as if he had solved a global ethical issue by simply opening a new Slack channel. In the article, he said that the old systems were paranoid, rigid, and outdated. He said he had cut redundancy and made controls flexible. He talked about me, about my documents, about my policies, about those weekends I spent creating these systems to protect the company from the problems he now claimed to have saved it from. He even called the family server a bottleneck, an outdated space that was hindering progress. I almost choked on my coffee. This man erased the mirror compliance logs and now passed it off as innovation. From that moment on, I started saving everything. Screenshots of articles, every interview. Everything with dates, notes, and descriptions. Not just for myself. For Dennis, for the SEC, in case anyone ever needs proof, so I can not just show it, but put on a buffet with the full dossier. And then the press release came out. Verser has officially applied for APO. They were going to go public. Document S1 was full of buzzwords. Data, flexibility, efficient logistics, proprietary algorithms. And it was all complete nonsense. I quickly looked at the numbers and went straight to the data management and compliance section. And here is a black and white list of rules allegedly created by the new management. Not a word about the old internal data retention policy. Point 4.2.1 has disappeared, as has 2.1. No backups, no word about the server 7. But I remember the old address from the old wiki company. I just decided to give it a try. Imbu 4.4. Page not found. He quietly deleted everything. No announcements, no notices of transfer. All the compliance documents that were previously open have disappeared like a thread pulled from a New Year's sweater. And I understood why. If anyone were to ask why their new reporting didn't match their old internal rules, it would be a complete failure, as if the Bible were suddenly missing a chapter right before the commandments. I checked the deletion date through Verhiv. The policy disappeared 3 days after my audit was laughed out of the meeting. I even found a cached version on a mirror site. She was saved. By the end of the day, I had a whole stack of evidence. A timeline of events, a deleted policy, the original PDF, a cache, and screenshots of Troy's face next to his contradictory words. All this was no longer just material for revenge. It looked like evidence for the court. But from Dennis, there was no word, no answer, no refusal. Just silence. But silence from the federal agency does not mean that they are not interested. This means that the process has begun. The message came via Proton Mail. No subject, no signature. Only 6 words. Tell me about Server 7. Dee stared at the screen for 10 minutes, as if trying to figure out if she meant the server, if it was a trap, but no. Dennis didn't play games. No one would write like that if they didn't know what they were talking about. I cracked my knuckles, opened the encrypted folder titled, If They Come, and attached the full change log from the first quarter of 2023. There were login timestamps, file names, deletion marks, and the name of the vendor who cleaned it all up. This was not the official company ZRTC Holdings, not from a list of official contractors of Versern. I have attached all the documents. Internal points 4.2.1 and 4.2.1b were active. I didn't click send right away. First, I leaned back in my chair and listened to my heart. It didn't just beat, it beat rhythmically, not from fear, but from an internal push, because now it was no longer some forgotten task in a lonely apartment. It became a signal, a spark, a rocket into the sky. Less than an hour later, a former colleague wrote to me. Let's call him Jarrett. Quiet guy. The system admin always looked like he hadn't slept since 2006. We used to just chat and exchange coffee in the break room. He liked my black coffee, and I liked his nutty. Jarrett sent a message. He used ZR, not documented. The technical director is not aware. There are no records. Everything is hidden, but I saw it. Just don't tell me you learned it from me. I looked at this message as if it were the Bible. ZRT Holdings is a temporary company used for covert data management abroad. She has no office, no real documents, only letters and defcatus. Troy wasn't just careless. He contracted with a shell company to delete sensitive documents days before the company was due to disclose its IPO. I forwarded the encrypted version of Jarrett's message to Dennis. And it all began. 2 days later, Versern sent a short letter to all employees. SAC has begun a routine review of compliance documents before the APO. Everyone is obliged to cooperate. A typical formality. But the next morning, the financial news headlines were in. See requested archival logs from Versern. We were talking about old servers. There was no fire yet, but smoke was coming out. The request was precise, not general, but specific. The SEAC document stated, we request a full backup from the family server, including all user activity for the past 36 months. This request is only made when we know exactly what to look for. They say the 3 remained calm. He even held a meeting, talked about complete transparency, and drank soda as if it could wash away his guilt. But he knew. Server 7 has disappeared. The logs were destroyed. The data was erased, but I did one thing. I wrote a script, a small automated task. Each time data was deleted, a copy was sent to cold storage at a third-party company. This system was invisible, if you don't know where to look. And you know what? SC knew. They found it, like a shark smelling blood. Following this, the company released a statement. Due to technical work, access to archive data is temporarily unavailable. We are working on restoration. What it really meant was we deleted everything and hoped no one would notice. But someone noticed, and she, Dennis, was already drinking her second coffee in a robe covered in cat hair. While the federal investigation was already in full swing, the Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, doesn't just show up. They don't make surprise checks unless someone tells them exactly where to dig, in which box, in which room, at what point in time. And here they come. Tuesday, 8:47 a.m. Two black sedans, three agents in simple suits and sneakers. Search warrant. Not a drop of patience. They didn't ask for passwords. They immediately said, "Show me the server." I was told that Troy was acting calm, as if he was on pills and an energy drink. He smiled too widely, talked too much. He said that he was in a hurry to meet me and that he needed a couple of minutes to get ready. While he was getting ready, things started to get confusing. The technical director closed his office. Someone from the accounting department tried to get the logs from the accounting system, but the last entry there was from February of last year. The board met midday, not for discussion, but to understand what had happened. SEC agents asked one question: where's the backup copy of the 7 server? No one could answer because the server had not just disappeared, it had been completely deleted. All logs were erased manually. Access to it was granted through a temporary account of some contractor, for whom there were no official documents other than mine. I returned home and opened my hot file for the last time. Found a file in CSV format. This was the backup that my script was collecting. There were timestamps, usernames, server number, file structure, IP addresses. Every time someone deleted a file, my script would record it and quietly send a copy to a hidden FTP repository that only I could access. It was legal, quietly and unnoticed, but in this situation, it is mortally dangerous. I removed unnecessary data, removed information about when the file was created, and packed everything into one memo. There was a complete list of all the steps to remove the 7 server. Who, when, from what IP, even contractor details. I sent all this through a secure Proton Mail account. The message went directly to the CC contact that Dennis indirectly gave me. I made it look like it was an internal company document, making it look like the information was leaked from within. Then I closed the laptop and went for a walk. I passed a guy washing his car, 2 kids arguing over a broken sprinkler, and a woman arguing with her smartwatch as if it had promised her anything. The world outside was the same. But inside, in the meeting room, just 17 meters away, things began to shift. The plates began to move. They chose the wrong strategy, laughed at the wrong woman, and deleted the wrong server. And now one by one the dominoes are falling. File after file, and I didn't have to change a thing. The news headlines changed abruptly, as if the needle had jumped off a record. Just yesterday, everyone was talking about the success of the company Verkstensvest in the green technology market and the favorite before the release of an APO. And today, everything looked completely different. At first, there were guesses. Seek surprise visit raises questions ahead of wine debut. Then came confirmation that the data backups were not saved, a federal investigation began, and then the real blow. The company's data policy lists the author as a fired auditor, and the server that disappeared is now part of an official investigation. This happened after the company's lawyer found evidence that could no longer be refuted. They looked through old reports submitted to CC and tried to prove that even if they had lost something during the transition, they had done everything correctly in the first place. But a PDF document submitted a year and a half ago was found in the Federal Archive. It was notarized with watermarks, an official date, and right at the bottom where the author's name was written. Marlena Davis was my name too. Everything has changed. This was no longer just a mistake. This was an official violation of the policy they themselves had submitted to the government agency. The company said one thing, but when Troy took that document from the site and simply deleted the 7th server, he violated the official rules, and the consequences were severe. Violating your own standards isn't just bad reputation, it is fraud. I wasn't happy, I didn't open champagne, I didn't dance around the kitchen in my socks. I just put on my jacket and went to the lake behind the house. There's a path, benches, geese walking around like little bosses. I sat down listening to the water, the wind, and someone's running playlist somewhere behind me. I felt calm. Not sweeter, not meaner, just solid. It was as if a weight had finally been lifted from my soul after 7 years of silence. I imagined panic starting in the office. Do not restore a lost backup copy, especially if the author of this policy maintains a certified copy. But the real surprise was something else. A message has appeared in the corporate anonymous application blind. 2 weeks before filing for the IPO, we were told to delete old logs. The system was slow due to outdated data. The technical director objected, and Troy said, I quote, "If Marlene wanted to keep them, she should have kept her job, hash files in a bucket of hash data, and let the internet do the rest." Someone posted a screenshot, then it appeared on Reddit. A short time later, the news was picked up by the site's junior journalist, Mark Artwire, and within 2 days the headlines were thundering. Compliance logs were removed by the CCO a couple of weeks before the IPO. Troy, who had recently been considered an innovator, suddenly looked like a butcher with a torn rulebook in his hands. He used to joke at meetings, but now he was being ridiculed online. Trust me, bro, I just simplified it. I didn't hide anything. Sometimes you just need to remove the unnecessary, and the truth will emerge. IPO was canceled at 6:30 a.m. Eastern Time. The official announcement was short. Due to the ongoing investigation, the company is temporarily postponing the IPO. No apologies, no explanations. Just silence so that the lawyers don't start fire. But everyone understood everything anyway. It was a disaster. The market reacted, as always, with panic, but it looked official. By 9 a.m., 3 major investors had pulled out of their investments. 2 hedge funds immediately expressed concern about the lack of transparency. The name of the company Tico has disappeared from the IPO list on the NASDAQ website. It did not return either that day or the next. And on Friday, 3 were placed on administrative leave pending an internal investigation. The board of directors tried to justify this. They say he took the initiative, but without taking into account the entire procedure, which simply means he deleted the files, and we delete him. Some PR agency probably made a good profit from this. I wasn't happy. I didn't even smile. I just wasn't angry anymore. Everything was finished. Over the weekend, someone slipped a white envelope with no logo under my door. There is a simple card inside. We are monitoring your work. If you are ready for a consultation, let's discuss a risk management strategy. Holster has retained Klen LLP, a large law firm with a strong reputation and client base. Of the half of the countries on Fortune's list, 103. They didn't want revenge. They needed a man who knew where the dirt was hiding. I didn't call them. I just scanned the card, attached it to a letter, and sent it to my lawyer. I just wrote it. Check it out. If they are serious, I want complete confidentiality and no PR. That's all. No speeches, no victory toasts, no motivational posts about the lessons we've learned. But there was one more thing to do. I opened that same audit report. It was once hung in a conference room as a joke, as if it had been ripped from a tabloid newspaper. It was him that Troy laughed at, and it was because of him that I got fired back then. The document was in its original form. Nothing was edited, nothing was hidden. Every bonus line, every missed delivery, every blacked out name. Dennis has most likely already learned them by heart. I saved the file as a PDF and called it Further Audit Final Davisavis, Ship 2023. I then uploaded it anonymously, as journalists, human rights activists, and others who know that important signals don't always ring loudly do. Sometimes they just hum. No watermarks, no signatures, just the truth. Quietly, so that it is easy to find. Not for revenge, but so that everything would be documented. Because someone had to leave traces where the fire started. It was cold in the room. It's always like this in federal offices. Cold is their way of saying, we are calm. And you don't. Halpern sat under the harsh light. All the pores, lies, and fear were visible. He was wearing a simple shirt. The folder was shaking in his hands. The sign in front of him said he was a rules enforcement specialist, but he seemed to realize how ironic that now sounded. Before him are 3 investigators from the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission. Everyone is wearing formal suits and has very calm faces. A woman with gray hair turned on the projector. A slide appeared on the screen. Item 4.2.1 of Version's by internal policy. It clearly stated, All remote backups must be logged and approved by 2 senior staff members, and the data must be retained for a minimum of 7 years. On the next slide, the signature reads, Marlene, certified by a notary. Everything is according to the law. The woman calmly asked, Where's the copy of Server 7? Troy tried to answer, but only opened his mouth. He didn't say anything. If I had told you, it would have been too late anyway. He poured water, but spilled some of it on his shirt. Everyone already knew he deleted everything, without registration, without permission. And now the traces have been restored by the very man they were trying to erase. On the other side of town, there is a simple kitchen. Morning light filters through the curtains. The radio is playing in the background. A report on how the market is reacting to the CPO issue. Marlene, barefoot, waters the rosemary by the window, quietly drinking without a smile, without malice, just calmly. The paradio dictator speaks, and the Pyorzen is suspended. The SEC is investigating the deletion of archival data. Marlene turns off the water, puts down the watering can, and stirs the tea. That's it. No fireworks, just one truth. They thought that politics was just a piece of paper, that the woman who wrote it was unimportant. But politics does not argue. She doesn't scream. She just waits. And when the time comes, he acts without emotion. Marlene opened the window and thought about how they had once laughed at her documents. But it turned out they didn't need to be protected. They just need to be activated. Yes,